sun is numb, the Keurig's clean. Your dog is dead, it's a Ponzi screen. Ponzi screen, Ponzi screen, because it's just something to do.
Oh man, I got a new printer today.
Whoa, what's it like?
Oh yeah, we're starting off with a bang. I got I don't know. It's just one of those sort of like generalized. I'm gonna yell because I'm so excited to share it. It's an HP LaserJet M203. It's
Yeah, what do you have? What are you playing with over there, Danny? You got the so
Oh.
what is this printer? What's this all about?
Well,
does it
dude,
do?
I got my fucking button printer, which is huge, and it's a nice Canon Pixma that I use for my inkjet shit, you know, and it's great for making buttons and stuff. But like every time I like wanted to print out like a very legally document, like my tax returns or like some shit like that, it's like you don't want to run that through the art printer. It uses up that precious ink, you know.
Yeah, totally. And it prints in Comic Sans every time.
Yeah, you're just like, God damn it, it's broken.
It's just like
Like,
Comic
no, that
Sans or
is what-
Garamond. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it just auto does that to that. And dude, actually I'll say is a nice little segue. Once I got my Trump bucks, I was just sort of like, hey, what's fun earning $49? Let's do this.
Nice. Trump bucks, baby. Good
Yeah.
for any steak and bottle of water at any Trump resort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it is worth noting that Staples apparently is an essential business, so you can go in there and buy a printer from them.
That's right, dude. It is important. I mean, I need to get my Post-it notes. Sure, the apocalypse is coming, but I need to remind myself of what I need to do today with a hot pink square.
If I don't have that fucking square, my life will fall apart. Yeah, you can kind of actually tell how businesses are doing, not how they're doing, but just sort of the overall mood in them based off of the like mandatory mask wearing or not. I found that the Staples the Staples is pretty chill with it. They're not worrying too hard about stuff. They got a lot of that situation where you got guys with like the masks sort of hanging around down here.
Oh,
you
it's
know?
just a chill mask, bro. He's just a chilled. Oh, hey, like I got a mask,
Yeah.
but I'm not an asshole about
Yeah.
it. You know, it's not like it's
Yeah,
over my
yeah, yeah,
face
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
nose. What am I, a snob? Yeah.
It's only in New York where you wear a mask with swag.
Yeah, dude, people wear like I've been sort of like counting the businesses because the Qdoba finally reopened right
Oh.
by me. So my favorite fast casual eatery in the neighborhood, I was finally able to indulge in again, and I realized that the only reason they closed for like 3 or 4 days was purely exclusively to put up a gigantic sneeze guard in front of the sort of like
Whoa.
area that they normally have the vegetables, because it's like set up like a Chipotle, you know.
Is
You've
it
got the
bulletproof?
stuff. Honestly, maybe if it was a 9mm, dude, you might be. It's like it feels like a bank in there now, and
Just
it
trying to,
was
like,
it was like
shoot
this.
some onions.
No, it was just like a lovely progression, and it was a wonderful metaphor for me in the way I do like to fight with New York, because when the coronavirus started, the Qdoba remained open, and they started out just putting like those signs everywhere you kind of see, where it was sort of like, hey, make sure that you keep 6 feet away from each other. There's some stuff on the ground, and then they changed it. So there were just a row of chairs in front of like the sort of like
Yeah,
throughway area where you get your sort of as like a physical reminder to just be like, please don't get close to the servers. Stop pointing over the sneeze guard. Stop pointing. It doesn't help at all. And then they literally closed the place up, full closed for days, just to be like, all right, you fucking idiots. We had to put up a full piece of plastic because you wouldn't stop leaning over and like being like, can I have the guacamole? It's just like so persistent. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that, Qdoba. I love it.
So, Gabe, what's new with you, man? How have you?
That was a good one.
So still spending my life within a 5-block radius of my apartment, which is very different than Danny Feltz's like sort of Blade Runner lifestyle as a
Yes.
as a messenger in our like techno dystopian future that we live in now, where everyone is working from home. I don't do much other than take small restorative walks around the apartment
Hell yeah, dude.
when I'm not FaceTiming and Zooming with people.
God, how's Manhattan Avenue?
Manhattan Avenue is pretty much shuttered except for the bodegas.
Yeah, that tracks for sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, people can walk around and stuff, but one thing that I feel like we've just been totally stripped away from the consumer mindset for the most part, unless you're ordering things from Amazon. I mean, at least for me, at least, I don't really go out with money in my pocket. The only thing I go out with now is a pair of keys, my keys to get into my building.
Mm.
So, is this what
Yeah.
Cuba's like? Is this what Cuba's like? Don't
Yeah.
know.
For what it's worth, that does play out all right. I mean, I don't know what it is. Bushwick is actually pretty hopping right now. I would say people are trotting around like normal, in most places, but Greenpoint, not so much. It's much quieter over there.
Yeah. Do you do deliveries over in this area?
Sometimes they come over there, but like they're always in that one area of Greenpoint that's like closer to Long Island City, where like the really fancy lofts are over on like
Yes.
Clay Street and
yeah.
like weird those like areas. And then like the app that I work for will be like, "Do you want to do a pickup in Long Island City?" And I'm like, "Fuck no, that shit sucks. I am not crossing the Pulaski Bridge. I fucking refuse. I am not going into Queens."
So
Guys,
when you talk,
is the creek in the cave an essential business?
Absolutely not. It's the least essential thing that has ever existed.
yeah, I don't know if I don't think it's open right now. Definitely no open mics, but I do see it's hilarious when Rebecca Trent, who runs it, she owns the place. Whenever she posts on Facebook that people are calling and asking, like lunatics are still calling and asking if the mic is on.
Wait, people, what? Okay, I'm okay with the idea of somebody on March 15th calling and asking if there's an open mic. If you, in the year of our Lord, April 21st, 2020, are asking after a full month of New York City lockdown, "Oh, is the 6 p.m. mic going?" What, are you fucking insane? Like,
Yeah,
what is wrong with you?
But like that there are like some like autistic edgelords who haven't spoken to anyone in weeks, except for at open mics. That's like their entire life.
Maybe
entire-
maybe it's like
is
their
this.
their one phone call of the day.
Yeah, it's just their one phone. They just really want to talk to Rebecca. What if this is all just a plot to fall in love with Rebecca Trent? Like, it's like you like the you like the waitress, so you just go to the same restaurant every day, like maybe it's
Yeah,
it's
I
gonna
can
be a
see
beautiful love
see
story.
calling someone just for that connection, just to reach out
Yeah.
and touch someone,
Yeah.
But what do you think is going to happen with all of these small businesses? Because I would miss the creek in the cave. I think, and I don't think it's
Oh, yeah,
alone
me
in
too.
being afflicted by this pandemic. Like, what's going to happen to all these small businesses? Is everything just going to shutter and get gobbled up by like Omnicorp?
I don't think everything is going to get shuttered. I do think it's going to. I think one funny thing will happen is a fairly interesting New York phenomenon. The weird little places that seem like they were closed all the time. If they don't go out of business, those businesses will all just be like, "Okay, I was sure that was a front for drugs. Now I'm positive that's a front
Yes.
for drugs now." That's one thing. That is absolutely one thing that will happen. I think there is absolutely a valid worry about the consolidation of business for sure. Like, you're just, every thing that used to be a bodega or whatever is just going to turn into a Chipotle or another Blessed Qdoba. But I honestly think it's going to be one of those situations where like it's going to half happen that way, and then there's also just going to be one of those kind of weird turnover moments where it's just like, yeah, now there's another weird axe throwing bar in Williamsburg. What happened to the old one? Oh, it died. But
Well,
now there's another one.
I mean, I think as long as like, as we've like looked at from our other pandemic coverage, as long as we're willing to, fight to keep these places open, then the government will impose some sort of laws that help them in some way, right? Like in theory, you'd think that if you say, "Oh, we want to make sure that not every business becomes a Qdoba," and mostly because it's not that good, not because it's a chain at all, but because I personally don't like it that much. But like it would be like I think that it just depends on like what sort of legislation comes out of it to protect them. Like mortgage payments are frozen, right? So as long as
Sure.
mortgage payments are frozen and they're not going to have to pay them back once the quarantine ends, then I don't know, Creek will go back to business, right?
It really is kind of up in the air. I think I still contend that the worst business is hit by this. I mean, like all bars. Jesus Christ, what a fucking that it's like it's so crazy. I can't imagine being a bartender right now. I mean, that's just one of those things where just like, yeah, if you did that, you just got to do something else for a couple months because there's just no bartending.
Have you guys gotten
know?
any? Have you guys gotten any cocktails to go from bars?
I haven't.
I see it. It's happening on Manhattan Avenue at a couple bars.
I've
How's that-
delivered them. I've delivered a couple margaritas.
Really? How's that?
Well, it's okay. I should. I'm not like delivering a margarita in like a flouted glass. It's not like I take a margarita and just throw it in this entire glass thing into my bag and immediately explodes. This one place that I've been delivering from, they are kind enough. They are blessed souls that they put the margarita in like a plastic container, like similar to a Starbucks cup, and then they wrap it with saran wrap, which is,
Oh, good.
and then they also have a holder for it. So, oh, it's beautiful when they do that, you know.
Do you have to wear a bow tie when you deliver them? And some suspenders?
Yeah. And then I just come by. I am like, thank you for ordering, and then they're about to close their door, and I come up with the fajitas, and they're like, no, 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 no.
You have a
Like,
sizzler
how did
plate.
yeah, how did you deliver the fajitas on a sizzling cast iron pan from Bushwick all the way to Park Slope? I'm just that good.
All right, guys. So how about you, David? What's going on, man?
My work, we just went public with our union.
Hey!
We just
Solidarity forever.
Danke schön. Danke. Gracias. We just went public. We announced our intention to unionize on 420, baby. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Did you make that decision? Were you the one who was like, listen, guys, this is going to line up on a very special day?
We have to have this line up with Hitler's birthday. We have to.
We have to. We absolutely have to. The Aryan nation is depending on us.
Yeah.
You know what he would hate? Somebody unionizing, especially on his birthday.
Yeah.
Dude, he would hate that. He fucking would hate that.
What are you talking about? Hitler was a leftist, right?
Yeah.
National socialism.
But yeah, so so I work for I'm a reporter for a finance publication called Pageant Media. For my day job, I write about mutual funds and compliance issues, and basically I haven't talked about where I work this entire time that we've been doing Ponzi Scream because I was worried that if I outed myself, and I didn't talk about it on my social media either, if I would worry that if I outed myself that they would use that to retaliate against me, basically. And that could still happen, but now that we're public, we have more protections, if that makes sense. Basically,
What, David? I don't know what you're talking about. These managers retaliating. That just never happens. What are you talking about?
it's a bad thing. They would never do that because they know that it's naughty. That is why for the same reason. That is why my cat never scratches the couch. He never does it because he knows it's bad.
He knows it's naughty.
He knows it's naughty.
He's being a naughty boy.
So we went public. We have 26 people in our editorial unit. We are hoping they will voluntarily recognize. We signed a little public petition sending that to them. We all changed our icons on our company Slack. Pretty fucking cool. And
Nice.
Yep, and all at the same time and stuff. And We hope that they'll voluntarily recognize. They probably won't, because the CEO of our company, his father or his grandfather is in the House of Lords. It is a British company, and so I don't think that we're gonna get like a super like welcome, open arms sort of reception. And so then we're probably gonna have to go to an election. And because it's during coronavirus, we're doing the whole thing remotely. And it's like we like had all these special processes they had to get cleared in order to be able to file publicly with the National Labor Relations Board. And then the election is going to be like over mail. It's gonna be like a mail-in ballot, like I'm in Washington State or something.
So how long was this? Can you talk about like how sort of what goes into unionizing a workspace, or how long it took, or
Yeah. So
can you give away some of the secret sauce?
Yeah, dude.
little bit. So this first started with me and a couple other people, maybe last June or July, and we have been slowly reaching out to people who we trust. Basically, I mean, the thing is that it all has to be secret, and the strategy to reaching out to people is not like, hey, I'm here with Planned Parenthood Union, like it can't be like a canvasser on the street. Like, do you support PETA or like Free Comedy Show or join the union? Like, it can't be that style. It has
You
to
got to
be
slide into the DMs.
you got to slide into the DMs rhetorically. Yeah, yeah. Like, you have to be like, man, this job sucks, right? And they're like, yeah, I hate these benefits.
Oh yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, I hate these benefits too. And the managers just treat you like shit. And like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's no women in this office, like, and they're like, yeah, no ladies. And like, man, if only we could like negotiate some terms, but we don't have a contract, so we can't do that. And they're like, yeah, I guess we don't have a contract. And like, yeah, that sucks, man. I mean, I guess the only really way to get a contract would be to, I don't know, like, I guess with like a union or something, we could have a contract. And like, yeah, I guess with that. I'm like, well, I mean, with that, would you be interested in that? And then the person's like, huh, I never really thought about it. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I guess I'd probably support a union. And you're like, okay, great. I've been lying to you this whole time. We've been organizing this workplace. Now that I know that I trust you, we have like 70% support of the union of the office already, and we want your support. And so you have to do that with every single individual in the workplace. And so it takes months. It can take forever. And you can't do it on company, time. Obviously it has to be secret because they can. Retaliation is illegal, but it's also very easy to cover up retaliation with some other pretext, right?
Yeah, because you're
Yeah.
wasting time. You're doing other things when you're supposed to be on the clock.
Yeah, or you can say like, we're firing you because you showed up to a meeting 10 minutes late, and
Yeah.
you'd be like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Because like every day, everyone commits a tiny little sin at their office, right? So they can always find some excuse. Like, we weren't happy with your performance, that's why we're firing you, and they'll just say
That's
that.
right.
And that's all you can really. So and then you have to like go prove. You have to like get a lawyer, and you have to go prove that you were discriminated against, and that just like takes a whole lot of work, and that can take months and stuff. And so you have to be very quiet. You have to be like very secret about it.
Did you have were there outside forces that helped you? Like existing unions that kind of help steer the conversation or offer any sort of support?
Well, I got in touch with DSA's labor branch,
Ooh.
and they gave me a bit of a training on how to unionize, and they also got me in connection with the News Guild. So I would highly encourage anyone who's interested in unionizing to attend a DSA meeting, and especially if you live in New York, the labor branch is the best place to go do that. And they just have all sorts of resources, and they're very well connected in the labor movement. So yeah, that's how I got connected to the News Guild, and then the News Guild kind of held our hand the entire way, starting in maybe September, October. We got in touch with them finally. Another hard
Mhm.
thing was just that our office has really high turnover, because it sucks. And so people were leaving all the time, so we'd have to like recruit new people all the time when we would lose like 4 people who were supporting the union beforehand. So that was also another reason for the delay. I mean, we had one person who straight up, she lost her job because my company like, well, I shouldn't speak about this, but I don't have permission to speak about that publicly.
Yeah,
but like,
confidential. Woo!
Yeah. But anyways, let's just say the company has treated people poorly in ways that would be surprising and very, very fucked up regarding immigration procedures, regarding paid family leave, and pay general, like salaries. So yeah, we are unionizing. Hope to go public. Voluntarily recognized. If not, we're gonna have an election about a month from now.
I have a question actually, as considering the optics of what you were describing, how you guys all put your Slack avatars as your union logo and what have you. I have to imagine doing a sort of act like that in a place where you might have to like interact with somebody directly is it could be very awkward, because I mean it's like the equivalent of, for a while you're just sort of like, I mean we're all kind of secluded right now, so you're not in your office walking around hanging around the coffee pot, etc. But if you were, it would be like everything's normal until one day David and then 27 other of his friends have all uniformly decided to wear a giant green wig, and it's and you're just like, yep, this is I've been planning this for months.
But
then
the giant green wig also says like, we want to take control of this office.
How antagonistic were they to you, or just what were the what was the resistance that they were able to put up and the negotiating?
They haven't issued a formal response yet. We sent the email. I've been in 2 days worth of meetings. Everyone has had conversations with management. They have not mentioned it once. So nothing so far, but that's probably because they're preparing a formal response. There are things that management is not allowed to say legally. They cannot say, if you join a union, you will lose your job. If you join a union, we will go out of business. Things like that, they are not allowed to say. So they have to be very careful about some of the responses that they give. And technically, we have to as well. But there's far fewer restrictions on the union in terms of what they can say during a campaign before we achieve certification. So really, like, they've started they got whiff of our union maybe 3 weeks ago before we went public, and they had spoken to a couple people about being like, yeah, the union, that'll make it really hard for us to fire people. And we're like, well, that's kind of the point. That's not.
It's like, what are you talking about? You mean the worst thing that can happen to people when they're employed? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that is not quite the like positive that you think it is. So that has been, we've heard that. We heard one thing that they said, like, well, the union at the Financial Times supported this guy who was accused of sexual harassment, and they supported him. And the funny thing about that is there's no union at the Financial Times. Like,
oh man, dude,
there's a reasonable chance that just never happened. So they'll just lie, and they tried to lie about a couple other situations, and they're allowed to lie.
Yeah,
they are allowed to lie, but they can't say they can't issue threats.
You know what this is actually? I cannot remember the exact Supreme Court case because it's escaping me.
Frazier versus Cupp was a United States Supreme Court case that affirmed the legality of deceptive interrogation tactics. Acting on a tip, police picked up and interrogated Martin E. Frazier, a 20-year-old U.S. Marine, about his possible involvement in the murder of Russell Anton Malley. Frazier, along with his cousin, Jerry Lee Rawls, was seen at a bar with the victim before the murder. During the interrogation, police falsely informed Frazier that Rawls had already confessed and implicated him in the murder. Frazier denied any involvement in the crime and suggested speaking with an attorney, but police continued to question him. Police elicited a confession, which was used against him at trial.
But apparently, there's like a Supreme Court case on file that says it is actually like very legal for officers, cops, etc., to kind of like lie to you to get you to give the information that they want to give. Yeah, which it's so they can be like, look, buddy, you know, I get it. We all make mistakes. Like I smoked the ganja back in the day as well, 420. So if you just let me know about this, and we can kind of move past it. And then you're a teen who's like, okay, I did it, and they're like, and you're going to jail. And it like, you know, they can totally do that. And like that's the cops. So if like that's what the cops can do, I mean, like if you're you're a private business being like, I don't know, man, I heard that there was this other guy who worked at the dick sucking factory who had to go on like unpaid medical leave because he's tried to start a union. The local DS what would you call it? What would the dick sucking factory union be called?
DSFU.
Dick Suckers Strong.
Yeah, or the local Big Naturals Local 25. Like I don't know, I like kind of like that, or I don't know. We'll come up with something maybe by the end. Yeah,
Edit
keep it in the
good
back
one later. Yeah,
keep it in the back of your head if we don't come up with something. But yeah, the local DSLs. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I totally would expect, you know, upper management like that to just straight up be antagonistic to it to the point where it's just like, yeah, they want to partially fabricate some facts here. That sounds about right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm expecting over the course of the next couple weeks, and I will keep you guys posted as to.
And how many
all
people
that
are in
stuff.
the union?
So
How
there's
many
gonna be
employees?
There's 50 people, or 46 or 48 maybe, in the U.S. office, but we are not including salespeople in our union. We tried to include them. We tried to recruit very heavily on the sales side, and they were not interested. So we went forward without them as just journalists.
Yeah, I'm sure the salespeople, they make all their money off of commissions,
That's right.
and so there's no incentive because the salary doesn't matter.
Yeah, and some of the salespeople have equity in the company, and a lot of them are very, very close to management, and they're like here. Some of them are like coming over from London, and they're really only here for like study abroad, basically. You know, like it's like it feels like study abroad to them, so they don't really have any stakes in the company in a real way. And then some of them are like 22 and just graduated from, you know, Columbia or NYU and just want to make a lot of, you know, are just feckless and childish. You know,
Interesting.
yeah.
A bunch of proper bruvs just trying to get their USA experience on, you know.
Literally, yeah.
So you deal with you try to recruit some chaps.
Dude, I have learned so much British slang since working in for an English company. It's just like astounding. There's so much linguistic diversity of accents in the UK, and I love all of them. I think they're all funny and stupid and bad. And it's
Right.
great.
You're like, oh, that guy's definitely from Manchester. Oh, that's a lower class son of a chimney sweep from Bath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they sound very different from a South Ender.
Yeah. So
Well,
getting there on that.
I'm looking forward to hearing your grime MC album.
Yeah. We're and then when they rap and shit, it's like they don't even try to hide the accent. We're like, oh, it just like has that weird kind of like.
So good.
Yeah, go on.
I love that show so much. I didn't know you watched that show. So
here's the thing, I don't.
Oh. So if you guys could just follow we are PMWG on Twitter. So WEARE PMWG on Twitter. That's our union's Twitter account. Follow us, retweet our shit. Basically our readership is not going to be supportive.
Like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, like most journalists unionize using like some public pressure campaigns, like recognize our union, we're BuzzFeed, you know, all of our readers are like, 24 and in theory like dogs and Obama, and so they would be like, support our union and we put pressure on it and stuff like that. But like for us, our like the people who read our publication are hedge fund managers, the like
Lil.
top compliance officers at like Fidelity and Prudential, and like a couple SEC staffers.
So a bunch of free market bros.
Yeah, just like the people who you would expect to be like most antagonistic to the idea of unions are our readers. So we're just not even really anticipating anything remotely close to support from them.
It turns out you got a real bad response from University of Chicago. That's so weird. Wow, that's crazy. Speaking of which, we do have to do an episode on the University of Chicago at some point.
Yeah, we do. Should we jump into the stuff?
We should hit we got to talk about that goddamn the forfeiture, the possible stimulus check forfeiture, right?
Yeah. So this is from Prospect, like the American Prospect. Basically, your bank can take your stimulus check if you owe them money. Any creditor who you owe money to can just take your stimulus check. So like, except for like I think student loan payments and mortgage payments, and some states healthcare payments. But any other debt you owe, they have the right to claim your stimulus check. So like the thing that is supposed to keep people alive during this and keep people afloat can just be soaked up by your bank or whatever, whenever they want. So
in some ways, the government could have just written a check directly to the credit card companies that you owe money to.
yeah.
And like bypass your name on the envelope at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is sort of like so it's like, when the coronavirus first hit and everything, and Donald Trump and, the Republican-led whatever was first being like, oh, maybe we'll give people a little bit of money, the first initial reaction was just like, Jesus Christ, like these people, these absolute like goons are actually gonna out leftist the Democrats on the situation. But everybody kind of knew in the back of their head, like there's absolutely going to be like a degree of strings attached, to whatever happens here. No, I don't think anybody looked at that and was just sort of like, oh yeah, they're acting out of good faith and everything. And as these checks are being actually received, and like I said, I got mine probably about 5 days ago. This is, these are one of those little hurdles that people are going to run into.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, in this case, solely dependent on how evil and how much your particular bank and or private debt collector is willing to be. That is very much what it was sort of implied in the article that we read, because it basically said it's like, look, there's a provision in here that says you can do this, but we really leave it up to the discretion of the banks and the financial institutions over whether they want to do this, essentially implying that trying to take people's bailout money away from them in the middle of a crisis would be incredibly bad PR. But like, you're basically asking if like the Grinch wants to be the Grinch or not,
And he does. I really think he wants to be.
He loves
yeah,
it.
He wants to be. Yeah, I really think he wants to do that weird smile that curls all the way around his face. If I were to predict this, I would say here's my prediction. You can take it to the bank. All right. I don't think Wells Fargo is going to do anything. I don't think Chase is going to do anything. What I do think will happen is that you're going to see some weird like thing of a thing institutions trying to take people's checks, because the big banks, they already have incredibly bad PR right now. So if you do get people trying to do this, I think you're going to get weird sort of like tertiary named, debt collectors, like name something like national security, financial institutions trying to take your money or whatever.
The obscure guys, the B side guys.
Yeah.
And
What do you think?
And a lot of those are just subsidiaries of Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase anyways. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that's a bummer. That's really unfair.
What do you
Yeah.
think, Gabe? What do you think's gonna happen?
What do I think? I think that these stimulus checks don't really amount to enough because how many people do we have unemployed now? Like 18 million. And if you're looking at a stimulus check that's $1,200 and the average rent in the United States is around $1,200 a month, and if this goes on for 4 months, then we're still 3 months rent short.
What percent of the population is living paycheck to paycheck?
No. I mean, if it's New York, it's basically everybody in New York who isn't part of the 1% or whatever. Uh, other places in the country, I couldn't be sure exactly, but I mean, suffice it to say that most people have some version of debt, or whether it's student loan, medical, just trying to pay rent, all that shit, car
Aren't we
payments.
supposed, like, guys? We all supported Bernie. Like, we're supposed to have his stump speech memorized at this point. He said, "What?" He's like, "Something percent of people are living paycheck to paycheck."
Yeah.
You know that was part of the. You know where that was in his speech. You've heard it a million times. What was it? Is it 40%? Is that what it was?
I mean, that sounds like a conservative number, but yes.
I know where I know he I never I got Bernie's speech. But I never memorized what he said. I always memorized when he said it. So he would
Yeah.
always say something like this, like in the back third of whatever speech he said. I mean, I think you could say within basically like an 80% margin of correctness that he would say "look" as one of the first three words that he would say in any
Yeah.
single speech. Like you could depend on "look" or "the American people." That would usually show up there sometimes. But yeah,
I just
mean,
love
he was
seeing
all
him get riled up. It was so funny just to see. You can like see him just like slowly building up pace on like Colbert's couch or something like that. You're just like, oh, he's just going into it. He's just like the record is starting to move again. It was just funny to see.
yeah. Once he got momentum, he was always good. Anytime he got interrupted though, it was just like whoo. It was like starting like a really complicated juggling act over again. Like it's like, damn it, I got to start all the way from the beginning. This sucks. This sucks.
I'm so bummed out right now because I watched a Trump promotional campaign clip on Twitter today,
Yeah.
and it just showed like miles and miles of people waiting in cars to go and get like, one bag of groceries, and just like the haggard faces of poor people who are completely like without jobs and destitute. And
Uh-huh.
then it cuts
Oh,
to
I
what's
think I
Nancy
lost
Pelosi
the
doing?
audio.
And it shows her talking about like the 16 different assorted flavors of chocolate ice cream she has in her $20,000 like double refrigerator, double freezer. And whether or not
Woo.
we agree, like, obviously Trump is trash and he is definitely the problem. The Democrats have not yet decided to like portray poor people as someone that they're fighting for.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, that video looked like like basically that promotional clip looked more like a Michael Moore video or movie than anything the Democrats are putting out.
It's
Yeah.
gonna rest assured it will end up in a Michael Moore video or movie. I can guarantee that. That ice cream thing, mwah, it was beautiful.
Have you two seen that? I'll send you that tweet and that video.
How many years you think left she's got to live?
Well, what is she at now? Is she in the old ones? These like people at the top, they live forever, man. They live to be like 110 years old. They're all ghouls, and they just don't leave any space for new, young blood to come in and change things.
Dude, I bet like if we're real, it's like I bet it's a moderate guess that Nancy Pelosi could realistically live to be 100 years old.
It's
like we both know.
Yeah, and she's not the worst person out there, but like it's just that she's just so out of touch with everything that needs to happen right now. And I don't know, it's like Henry Kissinger's another one. Well, he is the worst, but it's like there's that thing where like the more evil you are, the longer you live.
Yeah, Henry Kissinger is definitely like the little boy with his finger in the dike. Like once he goes, there's a high chance that like all the other ghouls start to go because that he's the canary. He's the canary in the coal mine, as far as I'm concerned.
He's the first domino in the
Oh
domino
yeah,
theory.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
He's not going
And
anywhere, guys. He will never die. I'm sorry. I find it insulting that you guys would insult this great diplomat by even thinking that he would ever die ever. He will never die, and it is an insult to think that he ever would.
they're gonna attach up Henry Kissinger to that weird sort of like claw machine in like the new Star Wars movie where like Emperor Palpatine is like being controlled by a weird sort of, like Assassin's Creed style, like I've been kept alive this entire time. Like
Right.
that's how he's gonna go.
He's like, my corporeal form might have disintegrated, but my soul lives on, and he'll just enter a new young diplomat's body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh Hawley is a supple specimen.
Always hunting for supple specimens.
Strike
I
me
want to
down.
talk. I want to talk about one thing before we move on to Ebola, and this is kind of related to this. I just think it's, speaking of like decrepit institutions having new blood in them. The Atlantic wrote an article saying that the United States is a failed state, just openly, and at the same time, Forbes. These are two different people. I mean, I don't know who I know who one of them is. I don't know who the other one is. And he said that after the coronavirus pandemic happens, we will have a revolution. So Forbes and the Atlantic are both basically openly calling for a revolution. What the fuck?
The Atlantic one was very. Look, I don't read the Atlantic very frequently. Every time I see that big red A, that long ass skinny A at the top of a thing, I'm just sort of like, get that shit out of here. I will say that, look, the Intercept isn't right all the time, but I love their logo. I love the Intercept's logo. But the Atlantic, you're basically in for some weird flowery writing and stuff. And they definitely did not disappoint. I looked at this article and I was like, okay, this is 3 paragraphs too long. Look, I mean, like, it's cool that they were willing to just sort of be like, things are changing. We are at a point in history where anything could happen. But I think they definitely took a very they said it in a super milquetoast way. Like that was the whole feeling that I got from that article, where their thing is we're going through a sea change of stuff, and it's like, okay, dude, you're calling out every single thing but the thing that we're all talking about,
He spends a
which
lot
is
of time criticizing Jared Kushner, but he never really says like capitalism is bad.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the funny thing too. He even says like Jared Kushner was built and born into a nepotistic system in which he would eventually become one of the most powerful aides to one of the most powerful offices in the country. And you can't just be like, I wonder what kind of system would have provided that.
Well, I mean, I kind of like that they targeted this the rapacious nature of deregulating everything, and that Jared Kushner was the a princeling product of the Reagan Revolution, having been born in like 81, I think.
Oh yeah.
And so they did kind of bring up, I mean, all of this stuff is the Reagan wasn't the beginning, but he was sort of the dismantling of New Deal policies and like strong federal regulations against business. And in that, it's the article kind of pinpointed that moment, that sort of Reagan Revolution is sort of the beginning of the dominoes that have led to this pandemic now. I might have been reading into it, like giving these guys too much credit and saying that, but that was kind of the gist that I took away from this, is that
certainly.
That we were already what is it, the underlying health conditions.
Yeah.
that we had that made us more susceptible to this pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that that's all true. Um, I think that the difference is when you're calling out the regulatory state crumbling bad, right? But
Right.
the crumbling regulatory state is not the only way that you create unchecked privately held power. There are other legal and non-legal ways in which inequality has been very, very bad and climate change has been very, very bad. Not just because like Trump relaxed the EPA rules on coal and gas, right? Like the
Right.
fact that like I don't know, the fact that like union membership is down. We basically haven't enforced antitrust since the 70s. The Democrats have basically pivoted to technology will save us from the evils of capitalism, not class politics, and basically conceding the inherent economic arguments of the conservative project.
You know what? If I were a if I were a professor reading this, I would say, I would pull out the red pen. I'd immediately just like start circling stuff and being like, why? And then like too flowery of language, and then I would write at the bottom like, good first draft, should have considered editing more. That's and that's actually kind of what this article felt like a little bit too, where it was just sort of like, all right, this man is clearly trying to hit some sort of word limit here. There it's because it wasn't short. It was not a short thing. And like, look, buddy, I enjoy calling Jared Kushner a fucking like Horcrux as much as any other person. But
hey man, we're leftists. We write too much. We write too much and we go to too many meetings. That is what being a part of the left is. And it's weird to see the cultural of the left being appropriated by something like the Atlantic. I think it's cultural appropriation, actually.
So what is this
Yeah.
guy's final point though? What is he how is this what
What's his,
what
like,
is the
takeaway?
solution at the end?
he doesn't have one, does he?
We can learn from these dreadful days that stupidity and injustice are lethal, that in a democracy, being a citizen is essential work, that the alternative to solidarity is death. After we've come out of hiding and taken off our masks, we should not forget what it was like to be alone.
Okay, it's just the alternative to solidarity is death. Like, I just don't. It's like, look, dude, I fucking get it. I get what you're talking about, but like, he's. This was another part of that article that he kept going on about, where he's just sort of like, Donald Trump is one of the worst people who's ever existed ever, and it was. I'm like, dude, I'm tired of calling Donald Trump dumb. All right, that is a conversation that happened 5 years ago at this point. I don't need to call him dumb anymore. Of course I know he's dumb. Of course I know he's a narcissist and he's like unstable. It's like, well, I don't know why you guys like, again, you're just filling, a word count at this point. Like, call it what it is. Just say what you need to say and don't I don't know. They're just being the fucking Atlantic about it.
So that was the Atlantic. The Atlantic was being the Atlantic. The next one was Forbes. Very similar. I'll just give you guys the last paragraph. Basically, this whole piece, he just shits all over baby boomers. He basically calls baby boomers the worst generation and the most greedy and rapacious generation that has hollowed out all the gains and privatized them for their own plunder that were built by previous generations.
Go on.
So he also says that millennials are quote unquote the hero generation, and he gets into this weird, almost like eugenics kind of cyclical life cycle of transformation. And guys, we're the heroes. We're going to be like the new greatest generation, apparently. So that's what he's arguing. And then at the very end, he says that we are going to enter an era of technological humanism.
What the what? It's like I love how people make the comparison with generational stuff. I think what they sort of show their hand though when they make these sort of illusions like, oh, the millennials are going to be the greatest generation, et cetera, whatever. And when they say that, it's like they forget the generation that came right before the greatest generation, which is if you were born between 1888 and like 1905. And that is a generation called, I used to have a bit about this, which is why I know this. And that's a generation that's called the Lost Generation. And it was
Oh,
literally,
God.
yeah, I know. It was literally a generation built around the turn of the 20th century, of people who were like lost. They were the people who fought in World War One.
And the
uh
Spanish flu.
yeah, they encountered the Spanish flu. They encountered all the stuff that basically preceded the massive financial collapse of the 1930s. Before that, so I just think it's like, look, I love shitting on boomers more than as much as anybody else, but and I'm willing to concede that, like, yeah, as a millennial, it's probably pretty hard to deal with this, but I don't think the solution is being like, as long as we all have faster and more accessible broadband connections, will be perfect, you know?
What I will say, I mean, like the Lost Generation, they suffered from World War One, and then after them came a Hero Generation, and
Then
for
there was the
us, we are
silent generation.
yeah, and then there's the Silent Generation, and then the Boomers, and for us, we are the new Hero Generation, and the one before us was also lost. You know, they suffered from not having from Kurt Cobain dying too young.
Gen
They
X, Gen X,
Yeah,
yes.
Gen Xers. Kurt Cobain died too young. I mean, that was basically like World War One and the Spanish flu combined for
Also,
them.
pre coming of age, pre the internet, and pre the tech revolution. So being just 1 or 2 years older at the end of Gen X, you're not going to be as tech savvy. You're also
Yeah.
not going to have the same optimism
Oh,
because you remember bad things like the Challenger blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
There's
I
also
mean,
fear of AIDS
oh
and
yeah,
growing up
that's a
in a
real one.
completely sexually repressed 80s.
oh
And
yeah.
what else is a big deal? Oh, the Cold War. How about a fear of nuclear radiation and just
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
another form of like apocalyptic, closer to now, I'd say. The grimness of this pandemic era is a very condensed um microcosm of what an entire decade of arms race nonsense.
Yeah, you know what? It's I think I do love the analysis of the various generations and like the illusions that get made. Like when people say like, oh man, the millennials are going to be they're going to be like these, like they're going to try, they're going to work so hard and stuff. Like imagine it's like we're all roughly a similar age range. It's like, did you ever have that experience when you were like a little bit younger and your grandparents came? And for me, like my grandparents were all born somewhere around like the late 20s to like the early 40s, essentially.
Nice.
That was
You had some
their
young
age range.
grandparents. Nice. Hell yeah,
I know,
dude.
I know. I think my grandmother, who's the only one left, she's 80, she's 90. She's 90 right now.
Hell yeah.
So like whenever I talk to like my granddad and everything like that, they were always these sort of like jovial, like, oh yeah, greatest generation. Oh, we pulled ourselves up our bootstraps. My mom and dad were both boomers. But then you would be like, well, what was great grandpa like or whatever? And he was like,
Mhm.
oh, he was a marauder. Like he roamed he roamed the plains and stole apples when he could. It's like we forget that generation just right before that was just like so perilous, Just so like
who was before the Lost Generation? Do we know? Did they have a name, or was that
they didn't.
bullshit?
They didn't. That was
That
like the
bullshit just didn't
Victorian
exist.
era. Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
We didn't really have generations before that. Was just the Victorian era. You know.
So just like Teddy Roosevelt invented generations as a concept.
Something like that.
Fucking weirdo.
I'm sure if you go back to Europe and if we cared to like, Europe had pop culture before we did. Not like not mass media culture, but they
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
had. I'm sure if you went back to like London and Paris, they would talk
Mhm.
about their different the spirit of the age. Because
Yeah,
that's really
oh,
what you're
man.
talking about with generations is like what's the zeitgeist, the common cultural touchstones for all these people.
Yeah, in like the 1860s, all the kids born between 1860 and 1880 were the coalies, the kids who grew up with coal. All these damn coalies are ruining. They're so entitled. They think that they can get heat in their homes.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you've gone on YouTube and you've seen like one of those things where like we actually auto timed correct an old film reel of France in 1899, and you're like, damn, it was popping back then. It was pretty. You got those awesome hats on and stuff. Everybody's chilling on it, like in their horse and carriages. You got the Eiffel Tower all shiny and new. This is tight as hell, you know.
Tight.
But it's
Yeah.
funny. I don't know. Again, on Twitter, somebody posted a great tweet about like boomers, and I don't want to like rag on any generation, but they were like millennials have it so well. And then somebody posted the timeline that was like, "Yep, born into there was a .com bubble burst. Then immediately
Yeah.
after that, there was 9/11. Then
Don't forget the 2000 election.
yeah, the Iraq War, right?
Yeah.
2000 election, war in Iraq, and then like you just keep going, and it's like been like a nonstop series of like terrible things happening, from like Hurricane Katrina to the BP oil spill to the recession in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
which is before BP, but like it hasn't been. It's been financially precarious the whole time.
Yeah, I feel like our whole generation has just kind of been like Charlie Brown with the football and Lucy, and Lucy is God. And the football
Yeah.
the football is like the boomers being nice or something. I don't know.
Yeah, if I were to say to anybody how I feel about this in an overall sense, I would just say, "Hey man, look, let's not narrow this down to such a tiny sort of framework. We can take the bad stuff from all types of generations. We can have the political and civil rights instability of the 1960s, the sort of turbulent dirge of the 80s, the having no infrastructure and no medical health care of the teens in the 19s. Like we can have it all. We can have it all. Don't worry about it, you know?
Hell
the
yeah,
war of the greatest generations. Don't you worry about it.
So we got one more thing we want to talk about really quick. We want to talk about this is part 3 of our epidemic coverage.
Yeah.
And let's go over real quick some stuff on the most recent epidemic that had a really big, deadly impact. I mean, there was Zika in like 2016 or something like that, but the last big bad epidemic to happen was Ebola. And Ebola is a bad thing. It is it's like the scariest disease that I had ever really heard of. I remember learning about it in high school and just being so afraid.
Yeah, the only
of it.
thing that would make it more terrifying would be as if it was airborne.
Yeah. Yeah. The one sort of nice thing about Ebola was the thing where it was like, look, it's obviously infectious like anything else, but you have to like make out with somebody. It's like isn't it? It is like saliva based, right?
It's contact with body fluids through open
Yeah.
wounds.
Yeah, it's very fluidy. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole thing is like, one thing that I heard about Ebola is one of the reasons why it actually was contained pretty well is because it would just kill an entire village before it could spread too fast.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Like that was the thing that scared the living shit out of me, because once one person gets the disease, your body becomes like a water balloon full of Ebola juice. And you just like any touch to you and the juice comes out, and if that touches you in any way, if any particulate gets on
Yeah.
you, you're gonna get it and you're gonna die.
You're gonna become. You're like a big juicy berry. You become a big juice. You're so juicy. And you know when you try to eat some juicy berries and you get that juice on your fingers and it's so sticky and juicy. Now imagine that is a life-threatening, body liquefying virus.
Yeah. Fun thing to know about Ebola, yeah, it just liquefies your insides and turns them into like death.
Yeah,
basically.
everything leaks.
Yeah.
It definitely it speaks to the psychology of disease and viral stuff, which is why the coronavirus has been like protested and stuff, because it's just like, we in the recent last week or so we've had a lot of people going to the capitals of the United States and being like, I need to go back to work and so but if we had an actual Ebola outbreak, it's just like, oh no, you absolutely wouldn't get the small business dipshits going out there. They'd be like, no, I will actually not liquefy my kidneys.
Yeah.
To go protest this
Because
not today.
Coronavirus doesn't have the aesthetic appeal to make it as horrifying. Coronavirus, because if you corona, like when you get it, you can be asymptomatic, or a mild case of it just comes off like the flu or like a cold.
Mhm.
But with Ebola, people's eyes start bleeding. So you
they go full Joe
pretend
Biden.
that it's the flu. Like if Bolsonaro had Ebola, he couldn't be like, "No, you all have to go back to work. Viva Brazil," or whatever the fuck he's gonna say.
Yeah,
Like his
yeah.
eyes would be bleeding, and that, like a Billie Eilish video, it would be horrifying.
Yeah, it's like that guy from the first X-Men where he just slowly turns into a water kind of like droopy creature. He's like, "Ugh!" Like, yeah, that's what happens.
I feel like coronavirus, how it comes on to someone is kind of like the pacing of a Coen Brothers film, in that it's just it's like really like lighthearted and like weird and arbitrary, and then like you're fine, everything's okay, and then like you like cough once and then you die. There's just like so much like weird pacing and anticlimax in coronavirus, and oftentimes it has a little like weird hubristic element to it as well, of like, I mean, not to say that anyone deserves to die from coronavirus, but like you've seen stories of people like being like, protester of the quarantine died last week after failing to not do his quarantine.
Right, or like
Yeah.
the pastor says, God will save me, and then has 1,000 people come to his service, and then gets coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like Karen posts on Facebook, "Coronavirus is a hoax," and then like the next post underneath is like, "Dear God, lost my grandparents. Please take it seriously."
Yeah. So, but it's suffice it to say the economic reaction between Corona and Ebola is highly different. The first the first being that we did not shut things down.
This is, if we're looking at Ebola impact, this did not affect the United States. We were in the middle of a big old economic expansion. We spent about $2 billion on this. This affected 3 countries in West Africa really, really hard.
Sure.
And not many others. 11,000 people died from the 2014 Ebola epidemic. No one died in the United States from it.
And it really, and the body count was, I'd say, relatively low for Ebola. With that, I mean, the if you got it, you were definitely going to die, especially in like Liberia, because you just needed more medical attention than they had facilities for. They didn't have the resources to deal with it. Like the people that got it in the United States, there were like 11 or 12 cases in the U.S. and it was they were fairly much easier to treat because we had the resources. It's just a very capital intensive disease to treat.
And you know when you get it, like, immediately. Like,
yeah.
Honey,
like
have my
we said.
eyes always been bleeding? What's going on here? Yeah, actually, I didn't think about this, but in that way, it is an excellent sort of like contrast to coronavirus, because with Ebola, it was just sort of, like you could take care of it. And
Yeah.
it very much, it was a pain. It was really hard to make sure that people's stomachs weren't exploding and all that shit, and it certainly used resources that hospitals could have used in other ways. But like with the war with the coronavirus, it's a war of attrition. It's a war of like how many people can we take on at once, and if we get above a certain number, that's when people start dying. And Ebola was sort of like this little glimpse into it, where hospitals were not pushed to the max, but they're like, Jesus, imagine if this actually was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where it was a huge problem in like Liberia again, and where else was it? Guinea?
Sierra Leone, was that one of them?
I believe so.
Yes. And or Guyana? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But they were West African countries, and they
I got it right. I got it right here.
they they also were suffering in some of these communities from rabies at the same time, and
Oh,
malaria.
Damn. That
And just a variety of other like parasites and other diseases that just were like around because of lack of sanitation and poverty. So
it was
that
Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Liberia, if you all remember from history, Liberia was a country that America created, in theory, to send back African Americans back to Africa after emancipation.
Oh wow, I forgot.
yeah,
Oh,
hence
wait.
the name Liberia comes from like
Yeah.
liberating.
Yeah, and it also ended up,
Oh.
and it also had like one of the most brutal civil wars of the 20th century. Like bad shit. It's just like one of the poorest countries on earth has been like ravaged from just like so many problems.
And all of the
it's a tough
warlords
country.
have names that could easily have belonged to the founding fathers of the U.S. It's like John Taylor, like the cannibal
wait.
butcher of Liberia.
Dude, is that one country where its capital is like Monrovia or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
man.
God! Ooh,
So it really-
Liberia.
Yeah, it is an export of American founding fathers 13 colonies culture. Thumbs up.
Our country, 'tis of thee.
Yeah.
So to go over like a couple like big stats, $2.2 billion was lost in 2015 in the gross domestic product of those three countries. Right? So if
Yeah.
your GDP is already pretty low, you got really, really, really hurt. I mean, like they said it looked like in Sierra Leone, their GDP per capita growth in 2014 was 10%, and then in 2015 it was maybe 7.5%, and then their GDP like they got hit pretty hard from that, and this is, but then like Liberia, in places of high Ebola in 2014, their GDP per capita growth was -4.
Oh God.
And their GDP per capita in 2015 was like 0.5, 0.3 or something, and then they bounced back a little bit more. These were in places with high Ebola risk. This is all from the United Nations. They did some report on the economic impact on this stuff.
Yeah.
You might be able to speak on this a little bit, David. Can you explain very briefly, like, what it means to lose like 1% of a GDP? Because like I've been looking at that, and I don't think people fully realize where it's like, if your GDP goes down by like 1%, it really like it's a wide-reaching effect essentially. Because when people think of like, oh, it was only 1% or like 0.5% or something, it doesn't translate into the actual real-world consequences of what that number means.
I mean, GDP is just like what you making, what are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
it's like what like that is just like what did you, and the percentage growth is different from like total, right?
Sure.
So developing countries have a much higher growth rate than developed countries of GDP because they're just growing faster. They're making things faster. I mean, there's like at one point, India and China were like at 10% a year in the last decade or something like that. Whereas the United States hasn't really gone up of 3 in maybe 40 years. And so the GDP is a macroeconomic term, right? And how does it impact people's day to day? It's really just, it's not like bad GDP turns back and hurts somebody in effect. It is a measuring device of like how much wealth the country has in total. So
Yeah.
so it's not like, oh, inflation is high, this is going to hurt prices. Like, because like inflation will hurt people. It's not that low GDP hurts people. Low GDP is a reflection that we are making less for whatever reason. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Yeah, I the way I sort of play it out in my head is basically like, since the coronavirus has hit, there's been like numbers thrown around where like there's been a loss of this and this, and it's always been like a very small number when you look at it. And then when you actually factor in the effect it's had on people's lives, where people aren't able to go to work and they're not able to make money and stuff like that, I think that's what I'm sort of getting at, where it's like, these weird little insignificant numbers, they don't look like a lot, but they can mean a lot. And I'm not one to say like the GDP has to grow necessarily, or it has to be the best, or constantly growing. I don't believe in that. What I mean is just sort of how it affects people's daily lives, and if it means they're able to like make a living and not die of hunger.
It's not a force in and of itself. It's a measurement. And that's the important thing, is like things like wages are a force in and of itself. Inflation is a force in and of itself. Interest rates are a force in and of itself. The percentage of unions are a force in and of itself. But GDP is just a measurement. So
yeah.
One weird thing that happened, really intense thing, was the effect on the economy of Sierra Leone. It lost half of its private sector workforce as a result of Ebola.
Wow.
Huge losses. So that was a big loss. One weird thing is like measuring how much it cost. So I read this other thing that came from that Reuters reported on. Reuters reported on this study that was from the Journal of Infectious Diseases. They said that the Ebola outbreak in 2014 cost economies an estimated $53 billion. Right? So that is how much it cost to deal with it. As I said earlier, the United States alone contributed $2 billion of that. But the thing is that it calculated that number to include the human capital losses. And they include this number called the value of a statistical life. This is assigning a monetary value to human life.
Yeah.
Right? Just straight up.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's accurate. It's perfect every time. It's literally, and so this article itself, and this is something that is used frequently in economics, economists try to decide how much a life is worth in every country. I will read you this again, like an insane thing, really. I can't really think of just how bad that concept is, like flawed. It is morally, right? But so
does it would you call that a utilitarian worldview?
Kind of,
sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
which isn't always bad, but is bad in terms of deciding which lives to save.
Right. It's kind of, it's like trolley problem-y, like it's kind of like if you have one European whose value of statistical life is estimated at 7 million or 9 million versus 10 West Africans with a value of statistical life at $577,000 per person. You should probably kill the West Africans, right? Because that, in the most utilitarian sense, you're actually saving money.
Yeah, you get into some real what I like to call dork math, in this situation. It's not a real.
It's very opaque.
Dork fucking math. Yeah.
Those butchers who just killed hundreds of thousands of people, they were fucking nerds, man. They were just total dorks.
So, kind of concluding this, I think one thing to look out for in the future for Corona and how it sort of compares to Ebola is see how it affects Africa. See how it affects Africa, especially over the next year or so, because there's a lot of very grim statistics saying that Africa might just be the worst affected place. Not now, but eventually.
Yeah.
And then second, keep your eye on the prize when it comes to the guys out there who start doing the weird fucking Nazi math and shit, where they're just sort of like, maybe my life is worth this. And then you just immediately cut them off and you say, stop it. Stop it.
But who gets the ventilators?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
we need to see
it's
your
like the whole
college
death panel shit.
transcripts first.
It just reminds me of like the climax in The Dark Knight, you know?
You don't want to die, but you don't know how to take a life. Give it to me. The Indian will kill you and take it anyway.
Do you guys want to talk on the boats? On the ferry
Yes.
scenes?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I'll do what needs to be done.
Yeah. Give it to me. You're too scared to get your hands dirty. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So watch out for that. You know, keep an eye out. Again, it's hard to compare these things, but it is. I mean, Africa always gets hit real hard by these health problems and stuff, and this was one of the worst for them.
Yeah, that one was very, very bad. I think that assessing the economic impacts of it, like the 3 pandemics that we studied, I think were all kind of interesting because they affected different segments of the population. They spread at different rates. They were at different time periods, so they had like different abilities to like contain them. Like basically after the bubonic plague hit, there was basically like an entirely new Europe. Like Western Europe was completely, everything about it was changed because half the population died by some numbers, right? Then the Spanish flu, that was a lot of like lost generation war boys who got killed by that. And a very different thing from coronavirus, which is mostly killing the elderly, right? And then Ebola, this is hitting rural communities and wiping out the entire community. Not much else. And it was really reasonably contained. They put in there's a lot of money that was put in by foreign aid to prevent it. There was huge losses in private sector growth, agricultural production, trade. I'm sure that like there was, a lot of people lost their jobs. Obviously, a lot of businesses got shut, but that was all they kind of recovered in comparatively to what something like the Black Death did, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it recovered, and it's only a blip on our radar because it affected the sort of the colonized third world more than it affected the metropole.
It's a very stark like precaution or a reminder. It's like in essence all the people who were hit by Ebola were effectively self-distancing because they died before they were able to travel.
And it's a lesson of like, if you have like international cooperation and like robust like assistance in highly affected areas, you can actually stop something, right?
Yeah,
to a certain degree. I mean, again, with coronavirus, it might take you 2 weeks before you become infected, so it's harder to track, right? But like, we can do these things. We just don't.
We just didn't do it this time.
Not tonight. Not this time.
Not today, Satan.
Well, guys, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm glad we're able to look through some of these various pandemics. I'm sure we'll be able to pick up on a couple more randomly here and there, but yeah, keep your eye on the fucking prize, brothers. Make sure you catch some tasty waves.
Stay pure.
Yeah, stay very pure.
No sex.
Well, let's not go too far.
Stay dry and chaste.
Yeah, stay dry. Stay dry, my friends.
All right. Bye-bye. Love you guys.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.